All right, good morning guys. Glendon here. We have a garage video today to talk about my generalized overview of the 22-inch trail wheel that I built. Here's my doggy that's coming in for a visit. Hello. Okay, so let's cover the basics about this wheel. What is it? What are the stats? What are the specs? And why does it exist? This is a 2400 watt hour 22-inch trail wheel. It uses a C40 Master Pro motor, 2400 watt hours of 50S batteries out of a Master V4. Blitz pedal hangers, fast ace suspension out of the Librachem Lynx / Sherman L. 66-pound variety. I have both compression and rebound. Other than that, it has the latest generation V3 Master Pro motherboard. And the tire is a Shinko 241. Again, that is a C40 motor. And yeah, the chassis itself is my own design. It's an aluminum and steel construction, stainless steel. Most of the flat plates are laser cut through, sand cut send. All of the tube work is done by hand by myself. It is 1-inch stainless steel tube. And yeah, welded up the frame by myself and connected everything together by my own design. Internally, there is a crossbar here. I did fix the clearance issue since my last video. There's my bike bell. The motor wire runs up through the side alongside the suspension. That's probably a little bit hard to see, but this is the motor wire here. And that kind of runs up through here to the front of the motherboard. There is a pretty sizable hole here because I wasn't entirely sure how to tolerance it or how I was going to route the motor cables, so I just kind of left a lot of space. The top of the board is 3D printed. This is PETG lower right here for the thermal resistance. This bottom aluminum plate here, it's probably easier if I go through the front. The bottom aluminum plate sits on top of a H pattern cross brace that bridges both sides of the wheel. This heat sink is just kind of screwed in and then thermal pasted to the bottom of this aluminum motherboard tray, if you will. It's not really a tray, it's more of just like a plate. So the motherboard is screwed into that, thermal paste, and then behind it is where the charge board is. This is a TPU printed charge port cover, so there's the standard charge distribution board you would see out of a Master, so on and so forth. Other than that, the battery cases here, so these are Kydex. I made them by hand on a acrylic strip heater. So I cut them and basically origami folded them. You can kind of see where the fold part's up here. So you just kind of origami your way into the correct shape that you want. They are half shell cases, so the actual other side of the battery is leaning up against this metal flat plate on the side of the wheel. And then they are bolted in with a lot of screws, or they're screwed into the side panel with like all these screws, and then it's the same on the other side. So those are handmade battery cases, made out of Kydex. This is stainless, of course. Anything else that I need to cover? Seat is 3D printed. It just kind of, yeah, it's like a friction fit that just kind of, you press it onto the upper bars there. This is a yoga kneeling pad. More 3D printed bumpers on the front here. There is no headlight. There is a perfunctory rear blinker for the tail light. And yeah, I think that's about it. That probably covers all of the basic statistics on this wheel. If I forgot anything, you guys can leave a comment. Other than that, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of this wheel. We'll start with the pros and then we'll move on to the cons. Pros, suspension. Oh man, that feels really good. This wheel traverses terrain way better than any of the other wheels that I've ever had. Now, traversing terrain meaning like getting across bumps and like how it handles rocks, how it rolls down challenging terrain and stuff like that. As far as power goes, power delivery out of the motor and out of the controller, with the V3 Master Pro board, the latest generation, I don't feel like there's any lacking in power. There was a video that I put out like last week. I had the V1 Master board inside of here, and that board definitely didn't have enough power to drive this wheel. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise because the V1 Master board only supplies about it's rated for 250 peak amps. I think that's phase amps, and it's not very much. The V3 Master Pro is either 290 or 300, I don't remember, but it's a sizable step up, and the MOSFET count goes from 24 on the Master V1 up to 36 on the Master Pro V3. So the board is definitely more than capable of providing power to this wheel. But there's a couple other things that are a little bit strange with it. But sticking to the topic of things that I really like about the wheel, the pros, pedal clearance. Wow, there's a lot of pedal clearance. Unsurprisingly, when you clear the bottom of the wheel of like any stanchion poles, you don't have really much of any structure dangling beneath the wheel, you get a lot of clearance. And then you increase the diameter of the tire, you get even more clearance. This does make mounting the wheel a little bit of a challenge because you are stepping quite a ways up in order to get your foot onto the pedal. The other thing is I'm also trying some different pads, and that is impacting how I can slot my foot into where I should rest on the pedal. That's something that I'll just have to get used to, something I'll have to learn. It is what it is. But as far as a hard number in terms of what the pedal clearance is, it's on the low end of 13 to 14 inches. So probably a little bit, yeah, I would say like 13 and like a little bit inches of clearance to the pedal. Now that's without sag. If you accommodate for sag, I would say that it puts you right around like what? Maybe 12 and a half, low end of 12 inches for the pedal clearance. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about how this thing rides on technical terrain. Being able to just kind of not worry so much about striking the pedals or striking the shell against rocks as you're trying to cover terrain has been really, really nice. I went to Rocky Peak this morning. It was a bit of a disaster for some of the cons that I'll get into. A lot of that's probably calibration, but I don't want to get into the cons quite yet. The suspension, wow, like I really understand why a lot of people are on the Fast Ace train right now. This is not a light wheel. It comes in at like 100, I'm gonna say 105 pounds conservatively. It is quite heavy, but 75 of those pounds comes from, or it's fixed weight. Fixed weight meaning that nothing that I design can actually subtract from that. So for instance, like you guys can add this up real quick, but it's basically 75 pounds. The motor with the tire is 38 pounds. The pedals with the hangers is about 3 to 4 pounds. The Leaperkim Fast Ace shocks are 6 pounds for both of them. And then the motherboard and the charge distribution board is about a pound. So all of that added together, oh, the batteries too. The batteries are 26 to 27 pounds. So you add all that together, you end up in the neighborhood of 75 pounds. That means that the shell weight of all of the steel, and I used pretty thick steel, I also used quite a bit of aluminum and other stuff. So it should be no surprise that it's quite substantial, but my shell really only comes in at like 30 pounds, which isn't too shabby for my first try at this. I have overspec'd some of like the design elements in favor of ensuring that I'll have an easy time putting this wheel together. For instance, I used steel that was thicker than probably what I needed. I also toleranced more space between where the shell components come together. So like over here, there's gaps. There's like a lot of gaps between here. There's quite a sizable gap between where the battery sits here and where the suspension sits. And then like down here in this area, like the battery box is probably a solid 2 inches behind where this front bar is, and I didn't really need to tolerance that much. It's just something that I did to kind of be like, okay, I don't know how much space my welding is going to take. I'm just going to spec conservatively and add more material so I have room to make mistakes. Now that I've built this, I could probably shave off a few pounds in favor of and tighten up some of these tolerances, if you will. Let's see, anything else that I can say that's really nice about the wheel? Yeah, I think that I've covered most of the really good things about it. It's a wonderful like technical trail wheel despite the weight. Yeah, looking forward to the next time that I get to go out and ride it again. I'll probably do it again tomorrow, but there are some aspects of this wheel that are a little bit concerning. So let's go ahead and get into the cons here. The first con I already talked about in my previous video where I was talking about the ergonomics of the wheel. This thing is a fat boy, okay? A lot of that has to do, again, with the tolerancing that I took when I designed the wheel. The touch points are weird in that the top of the wheel feels wide. Mainly, so where your knees touch, if you're just like standing on the wheel, your knees tend to rub here and on the opposite side on the same area here. Now I've 3D printed TPU like little bumpers here to make the touch point a little less harsh, but it's still not really that comfortable. It kind of pushes your knees apart and it kind of forces you into an odd standing position. I'm not particularly bow-legged, so this is a little bit strange to me. The other thing is that when you lean forward and you lean really hard, your knee gets closer and closer to this bar. And if you lean far enough forward, your knee actually hits this bar. And that's kind of annoying because, again, it kind of encourages your knee to kind of come out like this in order to get around this bit of a lip. So ergonomics, yeah, ergonomics are a downside to this wheel. It is something that's probably made worse by the fact that I tried to tolerance very generously in order to make sure that I had space for all the components. I don't regret that decision, but it is definitely a downside. And then the last main downside, there's really only two things that I don't like about this wheel. And this is only something that I discovered because I took it to a very technical and difficult trail this morning. The brakes on this thing are ass. And yeah, it does not want to slow down. I feel like it's a firmware issue. It's almost like, well, it's a multifaceted problem because when I was going down really steep terrain, it felt like the front of the wheel was dipping forward. So it was almost like it was, rather than tracking Earth itself as being, and like the motherboard trying to keep the pedals flat relative to the Earth, it was trying to keep the pedals flat relative to the terrain that it was under. So it felt like the pedals wanted to dip forward despite you trying to brake. And I just, like, I really pay the price for riding some of that really steep terrain because I was coming down and I just couldn't get the wheel to slow down. I was basically putting so much effort into braking, like I'll use a empty shoe here for the example of what was happening. I usually ride with boots, so usually these pads fit a little tighter, but basically what was happening is I was leaning back so hard and trying to get this thing to stop and just fighting the wheel so much that the front of my toe was coming off of the wheel, like the ball of my foot was coming off of the wheel. I was riding on my heel like this, and then I was using almost the entirety of my calf, just like pulling back as hard as I could on this rear brake pad. And even with doing that and sitting back as much as I could, the wheel just felt like it kept wanting to go forward. I later found out when I did some of, when I was back at the parking lot, I looked at the horizontal calibration and I realized that the calibration was really shitty. Yeah, the wheel was definitely pitched forward. I changed the horizontal calibration to -3, and now the pedals are level. Probably need to recalibrate the wheel and see if that helps. I was also riding in hard mode, because usually when I ride trails, I like my pedals to be as predictable as possible. Hard mode usually does that. But I mean, if I need more assistance in braking, I'm gonna try medium mode and see if that helps. So yeah, the brakes really need some help. Part of this might be because I'm just a lightweight. I am like 140 pounds, and yeah, I mean, I might just not have enough mass to get this thing to slow down. Maybe I just need to develop some more muscle and muscle memory in order to figure out how to get this thing to really slow down the way that I want it to. But yeah, that's like the biggest con right now, and it's not very safe. You'll see if you guys watch the Rocky Peak video that I'm going to be uploading after this one, yeah, I get through the technical stuff relatively well, and then I get to the last part of the trail, which is just kind of like a steep, flowy descent, and I just like die repeatedly on the descent. Like I'm just constantly falling, and I'm constantly just like struggling to get the wheel to slow down enough. And the other thing is that when you're leaning back that far and like you're hanging your butt, like the majority of your mass off the back of the wheel here, like your weight is not centered over the wheel. And that means that as you're trying to maneuver the wheel, it's like this really awkward position. And then like all your weight is balancing on the heel, and it's just like really prone to wobbles. And yeah, it's just like a cascading situation of things going worse and worse. So yeah, I need to figure out what I'm gonna do with the braking situation. The main thing that I really don't like is how the pedals seemed to be pitching forward as I was descending. And unfortunately, I'm not gonna really know if I fixed the issue unless I go back out there and do the same trails with the horizontal calibration the way that I have it now. I just need really steep terrain in order to really test that. And if it does hold like horizontal, then I'll probably have a lot better chance of being able to learn it. But if the wheels just feels like it keeps pitching forward and I can't get it to stop, then like this is really a big hold up point in terms of the rideability of this wheel. So yeah, that's like the main con here. I do need to learn some other characteristics of the wheel, like how to bonk correctly and how to mantle some rocks and things like that, because I mean, the wheel has plenty of torque to be able to get you up, that sort of stuff, but the way that you take it seems to be a little bit different from like doing it on a master or something like that. I think when I was doing some bonks, trying to get up some of the terrain at Rocky Peak, it was, I was bonking a little bit too hard, and what would happen is the wheel would kind of bounce up, lose traction, and then since it was in the air a little bit, it would kind of pitch forward, and I would be like, oh, it's dipping a little bit. But yeah, I think that's more of a me thing rather than a wheel thing. It was probably a little bit early for me to take this wheel onto such a technical trail, but at the same time, I think I learned a lot from it. So I don't regret that decision at all. Where do I go from here? Yeah, I really think I just need to put more miles on this. Right now, I think the wheel's sitting at, let me check how much miles on here. I am at 14.2 on this motherboard, and I know I put about like 10 on the Master V1 board. So this configuration probably only has about like 25, 30 miles on it. Yeah, it's not a whole lot. I definitely need more seat time in order to get acclimated to it. And then we'll see if I can resolve some of that braking stuff, work on some of the calibration, and see where it goes from there. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you guys have any other questions about the wheel itself, feel free to leave a comment. If you guys want to see me die repeatedly at Rocky Peak, look for the next upload. That'll be quite entertaining. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys on the next one.